Hi, I am professional wrestler Gregory Iron, who also happens to have cerebral palsy. And I want to tell you about my time working with and wrestling the late, great Brodie Lee. Now, before I start telling my experiences with Brodie, I think I should point out that there are a lot of other people that had longer times with Brodie and were a lot closer with him. But from my limited interactions with Brodie, I can tell you that John made you feel like you had known him forever. As I'm making this video, we are very close to his birthday, which is December 16th. And unfortunately, it's been 3 years now since he passed away on December 26, 2020. The first time that I met John, I think it was for Pro Wrestling Ohio. I had known about John through Chikara, and one of my close friends, Johnny Gargano, had actually wrestled Brodie Lee up in Canada for an old promotion called UWA Hardcore. I knew he was great, especially for a guy of his size, and I was a big fan of his work. Little did I know that video didn't even do Brodie justice as an in-ring performer. When he was brought into Pro Wrestling Ohio, he actually came in for a super deal because we had television on a network called Sports Time Ohio, which I believe now is Fox Sports Ohio. We actually paid him through a semi-truck company called Pistol Transport.
Brodie Lee! Straight from Pistol Transport.
Because at the time, Brodie was doing a gimmick that was very truck driver-like, so we did that tie-in to be able to afford him for the show. A lot of times when guys were brought into PWO, specifically bigger heels, they would be paired up against me, mainly because the booker of the show, Joe Dombrowski, thought that with my underdog character, I was the best type of babyface to be up against some of these guys to make them credible right off the bat. So I was tasked with making Brodie look good, and that first time we wrestled was in Niles, Ohio, which is just a little bit outside of Youngstown, and I think we had about a 10-minute television match, and everything he did was incredibly safe, and I just remember how kind and sweet he was, and even though the match was about making him look good, he wanted to make sure that I looked good too, which shows how selfless John was. As much as I enjoyed that experience in Ohio with John, and I would go on to share locker rooms with him in Chikara and Dragon Gate USA, my most cherished memory with Brodie Lee was when we wrestled at Dragon Gate USA. We had a weekend of shows. I was traveling with Johnny Gargano. I believe this was going from Indiana to Wisconsin and then back. The night before I wrestled John in Chicago, we hung out in the locker room at Dragon Gate USA, and we talked for, had to be 30 minutes, 45 minutes, just about life. He was going to have his first child in the not-so-distant future, and he was very excited about that. That child would go on to become Brodie, little Brodie. The one thing that stuck out about that conversation with me and John was he was trying to get signed to WWE, just like I was. And the conversation really consisted of how two very unique individuals like ourselves were struggling to get to WWE. And I remember telling him, well, I don't know about me. I don't know if it's going to happen for me ever, but if they don't do something with you, they're crazy. I think he had just had a tryout with Claudio Castagnoli, who of course would go on to be Cesaro in WWE. Pretty quickly after that conversation, through some interactions with Kevin Nash, who he wrestled in Cleveland for Pro Wrestling Ohio, I think he helped set the stage for Brodie inevitably getting signed. But that conversation that we had in that locker room that night, even before he passed, it was one of my fondest memories as a wrestler. You know, like I said, there was something about John that made you feel like you had always known him. We were supposed to wrestle the next day in Chicago. I had 2 matches on the Dragon Gate show in Chicago. One was a pre-show match in a scramble called Fray, not the Fray, because they didn't want to get in trouble with the band for copyright. It was called Fray. And during that match, there was a timing issue because guys entered Royal Rumble style at like 2-minute intervals. The guy that I was working with was going too long on his particular sequence of moves or spot. I'm not going to name the individual, but he had a habit of doing this. So in that moment, Silas Young, who was also in the match, kind of panicked, and he pulled me to the outside of the ring. When he did that, my ankle went underneath me, my left ankle, and cracked against the ground. Instantly had a sharp pain going through my ankle, but I had to finish the match. And one of the last things I had to do was climb to the top rope, hit a cross body on Silas, and then get hit with a move to get pinned, which somehow, miraculously, I did. I got to the locker room. I took off my shoe. I was wearing wrestling shoes at the time, lifted my kick pad, and my ankle was instantly swollen, instantly black and blue. In retrospect, I probably fractured my ankle. I don't know that for sure because I was a poor wrestler without insurance and I never went to the doctor. And I walked around on it, limped for like 6 months after the fact. Literally would wrestle matches every weekend still without taking any time off. And I have to tell my opponents, I cannot be whipped into the ropes. They would try to plan spots before I got to the show and they would go, and then I whip you in the ropes. I go, no, I can't run. So that shows the dedication to my craft or the stupidity. Brodie comes up to me to plan our match on the main show for Dragon Gate USA. And I show him my ankle. I couldn't even get my athletic shoe back on. So I said, I don't know if I can go out there with you, Brodie. He's like, sure? Like, I'll take care of you, man. Like, you'll be fine. And I was like, I can't even get my shoe back on, dude. And he said, okay, I'll let Gabe know and we'll think of something else. A few minutes passed and Brodie had not gone to Gabe yet. And I said, just because I loved Brodie so much and I wanted the opportunity to work with him again, I said, hey, I'm just going to put on my Converse underneath my kick pads and hope no one notices, because I want to wrestle you and I think we'll have fun. And he said, as long as you're okay with it, it'll be good. I'll take care of you. And we had to cut out a bunch of running spots because I literally could not run. And I went out there and the crowd popped for me because I was pretty over in Chicago at that point when I came out as a surprise to challenge Brodie. And he gave me so much, made me look so good. And in the end, he beat me, made sense. And, I think I got a victory out of that just by being able to go toe-to-toe with Brodie Lee. Obviously, I was incredibly happy when he got signed to WWE. I knew it was going to happen, joining the Wyatt family. And then when he left WWE and went to AEW, I thought, man, he's finally getting the chance to be him. So many of the things that he was doing with the Dark Order, the thing with the roll of paper that he was doing was hilarious. And just, man, he was really coming in his own, having those matches with Cody. I remember specifically on December 26th, 2020, standing in the bathroom, getting ready to shower. And I got a text from a fan, of all people, and said, dude, did you hear Brodie Lee died? And it's just a weird feeling. Because at the time, he had been off TV for a while. And I remember thinking like, well, maybe it's like some weird Dark Order storyline and this fan doesn't know any better. So then I went to the internet and, there was a post, I think it was from AEW, said, Jonathan Huber has passed away. And at first when I'm reading, before I get to the passed away part, I read Jonathan Huber. I'm like, maybe this is some weird storyline where they're using his real name, because I didn't want to believe that it was real. And, I read passed away and then I'm seeing all the other posts. And it was just a strange feeling because he was such a good dude and so kind to me in my limited interactions. AEW did an incredible tribute show for him. And even though wrestlers passing is always incredibly sad, specifically now that I am a wrestler myself and in the business, but even before I became a wrestler, watching these tribute shows as a kid, when I'd see like Owen Hart pass away or Brian Pillman or Eddie Guerrero, these guys might not have been people that I knew personally, but because they came into my home every week, I felt like I knew them. And so I felt like I was losing a member of my own family. And so being close to that situation, knowing John, knowing how badly it was affecting some of my closest friends, like a lot of the dudes up in Rochester, Dick Justice and Colin Delaney, it made it that much more painful. And I can't imagine the pain his family was going through and is still going through, knowing that they have to carry on in the world without such a great guy. I just wanted to make this video to say thanks to Brodie. Thank you for just being so selfless and for being a very genuine human in a business where you don't find too many of those. And if there is a place you go when you pass, I hope I get to see you again someday, man. Hey, if you like videos like this, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. And do you have a suggestion for stories, videos that you want me to share here on my channel? If you sign up for my Patreon, you get first dibs. Patreon.com/IronOnWrestling. And even better, you can sign up completely for free and get free audio podcast every week. So check it out. It's free.